Been told that we are to report out to the Ways and Means Committee on the 11th of the month. So we want to hear today, and then we'll make deliberations at a later date. So with that, do we have an agency report out? Okay. Sade? Welcome, committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Sade Kane, and I am a senior fiscal analyst for legislative research. And thank you for having me today. I will go over the Kansas Department of Commerce budget summary. This is this document that should be the second document that you have in your packet. The Kansas Department of Commerce has a mission to empower businesses and communities using strategic resources to realize property in Kansas. The agency serves as the lead agency for economic development through the promotion of business, industry, trade, and workforce training within the state. The agency operates through 6 divisions: administration, business development, workforce services, quality places, international division, and tourism. If you turn to page 3, the fiscal year 2025 analysis can be found. In figure 3, you will see that the fiscal year 2025 agency request is for $290.1 million, including $59.2 million SGF. This is an increase of $12.8 million, or 4.6% above the approved amount. Figure 4 gives the summary of budget request. Item number 1 is SGF reappropriations. The agency carried over about $300,000 in unspent SGF monies. Item number 2 is related to the EDIF reappropriations, totaling about $5.9 million. On page 4, item number 3, the agency had a supplemental request for the Sunflower Summer Program. This was to support the program at the current usage rate and venue reimbursement rates. Item 4 was related to ARPA projects. This was a deletion of $32.9 million, including $6 million SGF, primarily attributable to one-time projects that took place in fiscal year 2024. Item number 5 is related to Apex funding. There is a deletion of $13.2 million off from special revenue funds for Apex projects in fiscal year 2025. Item number 6 is related to the Small Business Credit Initiative, with an addition of $25.2 million off from federal funds. Item 7 is related to an increase of $14.5 million for community development block grants. Item number 8 is an increase of $12.1 million off from federal funds for broadband grants. Item number 9 is an increase of $1.5 million for the engineering higher education matching grants. Item 10 is an increase of $1 million for the Retaining Employment and Talent After Injury or Illness Network program. Item 11 is an increase of about $924,000 for apprenticeship programming. On page 6, item number 12 was an increase of 7.5 FTE positions. And just so I skipped over some things now that I'm looking at this. So for this item, the Legislative Budget Committee did delete the 7.5 FTE positions, and I will go back after I finish item number 13, which was an addition of $756,000 in all other adjustments for federal grants. So the other recommendation that the LBC made was related to item number 2. That is a deletion of $5.9 million to remove reappropriations. And then item number 3 was the deletion of $3 million EDIF for the Sunflower Summer Program. and I can stand for questions on fiscal year 2025. Before I do that, I'm gonna change this up a little bit. So because we did this differently this year, I'm trying to see how best to explain things. So the blue sheet is the House shorthand, and you can see the House adjustments that were made to fiscal year 2025 at the top of that sheet. And the yellow sheet is the governor's recommendation, the governor's differences from the LBC, just for your that's for your records. And finally, the green sheet is the EDIF table as it stands right now. One side is fiscal year 2025, and the other side is fiscal year 2026. So if you have questions on fiscal year 2025 on any of those documents, I can stand for questions for that, or I can move on to fiscal year 2026.
Thank you. Committee, do we have any questions? Yes, Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know that there's at least a couple folks on the committee that aren't on Ways and Means and may not know kind of how this works. I know I had to be refreshed on it. So would you talk about what the difference between actual agency and this legislative budget committee, and then how that plays in with the changes the House made and the changes that the Senate made?
So for the fiscal year 2024 actuals, those are primarily on page 1 of the document. You can also find those on page 3 for fiscal year 2025. In that figure 3, you can see the 2024 actuals, a column for 2025 approved, another column for 2025 agency, and then there are 2 columns that are shaded gray. Those tell the agency change from previous year actuals and the agency change from approved. And then with the House shorthand, that's the blue sheet that you see. Those fiscal year 2025 changes, you can see the agency subtotal under that dotted line. That will tell you exactly what the House added for fiscal year 2025. I do not have the full number with me. I can do that math when I sit down if you would like that full number.
Thank you. And just so to clarify, for 2025, really the only changes that the LBC or the Budget Committee or anybody has made for 2025 is the deletions that you listed, 1 through 13, that had some deletions.
For the House, the changes that were made include item number 3, deleting 3 million EDIF for the Sunflower Summer Program. Item number 12, delete 7.5 FTE positions. And then on the blue shorthand, the House added 5.8 million SGF for the Bombardier Defense Project. They added 3 million EDIF to restore the reappropriations. So instead of deleting 5.9, they deleted 2.9, and then added some language for reappropriations.
Very good. Thank you very much.
One question that I have is on the FTE positions. We show in the back that they deleted 7 FTE positions. Was that shown on the FTE positions on the last page of the first, or last column here of the first page? Those deletions of the 7?
Yes, so the agency request includes that the 324.5 includes the 7.5, and the 317, the LBC deleted the 7.5.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yes. Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Sharday. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the blue sheet, when you're looking at the above the dotted line, the reappropriation language, there's no dollars. There are no dollars attached to that.
Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Where is that money?
These funds have money in them that were appropriated by the 2024 legislature. The agency has not expended all of those funds, so they are asking for those funds to have carried over into the fiscal year 2025 so they can reallocate all of the other funding.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Yes, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Sade. Appreciate it. So I just want to make sure, it does say zero, so how can they reallocate money that doesn't show up in the budget?
Reallocate wasn't the best choice of words. It's still the total that they received last year in fiscal year 2024. They cannot exceed that amount. They can use whatever they had if they receive this reappropriation language. If they do not receive the reappropriation language, it would go back to the SGF.
So how do we know how much money that is?
I can get that information for you.
Yes, I would like.
Is it not, maybe you can explain this, but above the dotted line, the title, it says reflects the House Committee adjustments to HB 2007. I thought you was on the reappropriation report.
So, Mr. Chairman, there's money in an account, and I'd like to know how many accounts and what the money is in those accounts that they're reappropriating. Yeah.
They had that here just a moment ago. Find it. Yes.
Thank you. Sade, on the FTEs, I noticed they've got like 317. How many of those are actually filled?
Mr. Chair, I don't have that with me, but I can get that information for you and email it out.
The previous question was on the reappropriations on the SGF. On page 3 is 312,545. Is that the number we're looking at? On page 3, the item number 1, under the approved.
Mr. Chair, no, this is for what was reappropriated from fiscal year 2024 into fiscal year 2025. The request, the item number 3 on the blue sheet would be reappropriating from fiscal year 2025 into fiscal year 2026.
Any other questions that we have? Yes, Senator Cluse?
Yeah. No, go ahead. Oh, no, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you just remind us the ARPA money, the interest amount? What do we have? Because it seems like a lot's being drawn from that. What is that amount?
I don't have that exact amount right now, but I know that we froze in the Ways and Means, we froze that amount.
That's what we did yesterday. Okay.
But there was the interest also that, I think the bigger portion of that was interest. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the, and I don't think Sade's mentioned this one yet, but this is the one that were commerce projects that had ARPA interest payment assigned to them that were deleted. I'm not sure if that answers the question that you were specifically asking or not.
I was just, Mr. Chairman, after that amount, what is that interest amount?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to layer on to Senator Tyson's question, I don't know if, are there other accounts that we haven't talked about that have funds that could roll over? Was that part of, was there a question where we're asking for all of those accounts? Okay, then yeah, I would like to layer onto that. That's, yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Do you have any? Seeing no other questions, yes. On this budget? 25, right, on the 25 budget, is there any other questions before we move on? Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a couple of questions. We were looking at the Rural Champions Program. What does that, how come that exists? Is that by statute? And I know it's not a lot of money, but we're like, where does this stuff come from? Mr. Chairman, it was in the email that was sent out yesterday, the documents from the email yesterday, sorry.
The agency might be able to provide immediate information, but I can provide you a summary of that program
That would be
in email
great.
too. Yep.
Yeah, and we also had, it was interesting, the Sunflower Summer Program, which the House took the money out of, it is part of the tourism program, so we thought that was somewhat of a duplicate. So I was glad to see the House made that move. Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none for 25, we'll move on to 26.
The beginning of fiscal year 2026 analysis can be found on page 7. The fiscal year 2026 agency request is for $190.4 million, including about 800,000 SGF. This is a decrease of 80.7 million or 29.8% below the agency's approved amount. Item number 1 on the top of page 8, the agency's request included 3 million EDIF for the Sunflower Summer Program. The LBC deleted 2.5 million EDIF for that program. For all of the enhancement requests that you see, the LBC deleted all enhancements for the legislature to look at it for review during the legislative session, so I won't reread those all over. Item number 2 was related to World Cup marketing, totaling 1 million EDIF. Item number 3 was the enhancement request for healthcare upskilling program, totaling 1 million EDIF. Item number 4 was for 500,000 EDIF and 2 FTE positions related to the Mobile Visitor Center. Item number 5 was for $500,000 for the Kansas Arts Commission. On page 9, item number 6 was a request for 350,000 EDIF for Transparency Database. Item number 7 was for 200,000 EDIF for the Global Growth Program. Item number 8 was related to the Kansas Kids Magazine. So doing a kids edition of the Kansas Magazine for 125,000. Item number 9 was about 100,000 EDIF and 1 FTE position for the broadband grant analyst. Item number 10 was a one-time SGF projects deletion, and those projects are listed there. Item number 11 is related to the one-time ARPA projects. Item 12 is related to a one-time housing economic development project. Item 13 is related to a one-time existing horse racing facility project. Item 14 is related to an increase of 17.2 million for broadband grants. Item number 15 is an increase of 5 million for the job creation program. Item 16 is a decrease of 1.9 million for community development block grants. Item 17 is an increase of 6.5 FTE positions, and the LBC deleted the 6.5 FTE positions. And item number 18 is 110,000, including 1,000 SGF and all other adjustments. On page 12, I would note that the LBC also deleted 4.3 million EDIF for various programs for fiscal year 2026. And again, on the blue sheet, you can see all of the House adjustments that were made to the Department of Commerce budget. And then, as Senator Owens mentioned previously, the purple sheet are adjustments that the Senate Ways and Means Committee made yesterday. Items 13 and 14 are the capital budget and debt and reference tables for your review, and I can stand for questions on fiscal year 2026.
Questions?
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just for the committees, the information that I looked at is on the green sheet that we had emailed to us yesterday for the programs, the EDIF programs. Sharday, I just see a lot of names in here that I'm curious as to, are they by statute, or why do some of these programs exist? How could we find that out? I know we used to do a performance-based budget, and they were supposed to list the programs and list why they exist. If it was because of statute, rules, and regs, I don't see that in this report. And so I'm curious as to why we're not getting that information.
Mr. Chair, I can send you the link to the PBB document that we have, and I can send you the Department of Commerce specifically. It's about 85 pages, so I can do that. And some of these have been put in the budget by request, and they've stayed in the budget, or entities have come back and asked for it multiple times, or it has ended up being that it's here. Some of them are by statute. I can do some more digging and find out if that would be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That would be very helpful, because we've seen through rules and regs that some agencies overstep their authority, and we just want to make sure that that's not going on in this case. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, but I think I'd stick around because I think we may have some questions after the agency may. So thank you very much for your report. And now we have the agency. Rachel Willis going to give us the Commerce Department.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Rachel Willis. I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Commerce. So we appreciate the opportunity to be able to testify on behalf of our budget proposal. This continues to be an exciting time for economic development in Kansas. So through our partnership with you, the legislature, we're no longer lagging behind in economic development. We're not that last state, and we're so proud of our work. We are leading and we are setting new expectations. So on page 1 of my testimony, you'll see just a brief agency overview, and then we've outlined the various divisions within the agency. So of course, it's business development, it's quality places, it's the Office of Broadband Development, it's Workforce Services, the Office of Registered Apprenticeship, the International Division, and of course, Kansas Tourism. On page 2, I did want to just highlight some of our specific achievements, so things that we've accomplished and we're proud of in fiscal years 2024 and 2025. So again, we've continued to power economic and community development in rural, suburban, and urban areas across the state. So I won't read through all of the bullets here. I do want to talk about just a few. So in 2024, the business development team facilitated 269 economic development successes, equaling $3.5 billion in committed capital investment and commitments to create and retain a little more than 5,000 jobs. The average wage of these new jobs was right around $66,000, nearly 8% above the state's median wage. The next bullet speaks to how we've recreated the Office of Small Business Development and Entrepreneurship as we work diligently to better serve those small businesses and entrepreneurs across the state. The International Division specifically conducted 11 trade missions in last year, in 2024. 2 of those included leadership-led FDI, so foreign direct investment missions to Canada, participation in the air show in the UK, business meetings with Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Spain, and Germany, and developing more trade and FDI relationships in Brazil and Australia. About halfway down the page there on that bulleted list, you'll see a bullet specifically about the Office of Broadband Development. Currently, that office is overseeing 9 programs with 86 active projects. By FY 2026, there'll be more than $661.9 million in anticipated funds invested, with more than 100,000 homes or businesses connected and being served with high-speed broadband. The last bullet on page 2 speaks to the Office of Registered Apprenticeship. This is a new office for us, and it's continued to have a trend of significant growth, jumping 10 spots to number 29 in the nation as it relates to registered apprenticeships. So this is the total of new apprentices, and following an overall statewide increase of 27%. So those are just a few of our favorite successes in the last two years here. So as you turn to page 3 on our testimony, this is really where we're talking about where the House ended and what our proposal is for you all as we continue the process. So we are respectfully requesting the following adjustments be made to HB 2007 to allow the agency to continue to operate and to maintain those core functions and further build on that momentum to generate new economic growth in the state. So we're asking that we return to HB 2007 with those 4 additional changes that you'll see in that chart that are that light orange, light peach color on those rows. And I'm happy to dive into those specifically. But before we do that, I wanted to talk kind of high level about a couple of those. The first being broadband. So broadband, the Office of Broadband was established in 2020 to ensure that all Kansans have the opportunity to live, work, and compete in a global economy by improving universal access to quality, affordable, and reliable broadband. So we have a staff of 12 that, like I mentioned before, manage 9 broadband programs, which include 86 active projects. To date, the state has provided $25 million in broadband funding and has dedicated more than $60 million for the next 6 years through the Ike transportation dollars. And those dollars very specifically are for projects, for deployment. So the money that you see in our budget is the staff and the operating costs associated with implementing those projects. As you turn the page to page 4 on my testimony, you'll see there that our Office of Broadband is one of the smallest compared to our neighboring states. So without these dedicated dollars in our commerce budget from EDIF, we could not provide those projects and carry out those projects, whether it's through Ike funding or the federal funds. Next up is the International Division. So since 2019, we have worked diligently to rebuild this division. And like I mentioned before, we've conducted 11 trade missions, hosted 10 delegations, and supported more than $13 billion in Kansas exports. So that's almost a record-breaking number there in exports. We do lots of work with companies across the state to make sure that they're able to market their products. Again, these functions are vital to the Kansas economy and Kansas businesses, and commerce and the state have gained momentum here as it relates to international, and we hope that we can continue to build on that. Tourism specifically was named the Destination of the Year by the North American Travel Journalist Association. And some of their stats include having 37.9 million visitors, a 4.1 increase from year over year. It's generated nearly $1.5 billion in government revenue, and the state and local taxes alone have tallied more than $800 million. The total economic impact of tourism, again, was at $13.2 billion, a 10% increase compared to those pre-pandemic highs. So we have recovered and then some as it relates to tourism. The direct visitor spending grew by more than 4.6%, and there are a little more than 65,000 direct jobs, a little more than 25,000 job support through indirect or induced impacts of the tourism industry for more than a total of 90,000 Kansas jobs related to tourism. So lots of good work being done in our tourism division. Lastly, I wanted just to highlight a little bit about the operating grant, just for your awareness. Again, this supports the basic functions of the agency. So this includes salaries, equipment, software, office costs, outreach, travel, and then a variety of smaller grant opportunities that the agency can provide to communities or other organizations that support economic development. So I would like to show that in HB 2007, Commerce has taken a reduction in almost every line item in our budget, and with many of the overhead expenses continuing to rise, it's going to get harder and harder for us to do our core functions. So with that, I will stand for questions. I'm also happy to address some of the questions that have been asked previously, so if you would like me to start there.
We'll ask, the one that we had first was the FTEs versus actuals. So what was your actuals?
Yeah, so our actuals are 324, as Chardane reported, but we've got some differences in what we count, and that was a snapshot there in August. So there was some vacant positions that we have no intentions of filling. There's some intern positions on there, so there's just kind of a variety of things there. I can tell you right now specifically, we have 30 vacancies, with 13 of those coming from our workforce centers. So our workforce centers are located across the state, and those folks are helping other Kansans find jobs. And I think because when your job is to help other Kansans find jobs, you oftentimes find a new job, a better job for yourself. So we see quite a bit of turnover there, and that's pretty consistent across the board. So that's about half of our vacancies, and then the others just apply across the board to different divisions within the agency. So with that 30 number, I will point out that's about 10% of our total FTE count. So I think for the most part, pretty reasonable.
Yes, Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, the numbers aren't quite adding up with the report that we got from research. It says 317 FTEs. You just reported 324. And I would like an email of the breakdown of what she just said, because the reality is you've had positions for several years that you guys aren't filling. You're using it to increase your budget, and we need to take a deep look at that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So that if I'm reading this correctly, for FTE, or for 2026, the FTEs on the approved 2025 list were 317. And we reported there was seven additional, I think, and then that would be a reduction from, that was 326 to 317 is what we would come up with. And so that's your starting point for 2025, is that correct? Okay. So if we could have actuals and maybe go back a couple years and put, and use the same date. That way we know what date that is. So, and then if you could address, Senator Tyson, would you give your second question? The one, yeah, well, Charday said that, yeah, the one you asked Charday, but I think Charday said that perhaps the agency could answer that question.
Charday's going to send us the FTEs is what I asked about, and the I've got several other questions actually I'd like to go on to, since Charday's going to get that to us, if I may, Mr. Chairman. So well, the other, what I asked Charday was their authority to have some of these programs. Like, I know the House removed it. It was $1 million you guys were going to put for a drone program. Where did that come from? I've never heard the Department of Commerce doing anything with drones. All of a sudden, you're doing a drone program.
Members of the committee, yeah, so that was a request that came from outside the agency. That was, that the House Subcommittee and then Appropriations approved specifically. So it's related to making sure that, the way my understanding is that the components of some of those drones then are made here in America. But again, that was not one of our enhancement requests. That came from an outside entity that feels like it's connected to economic development and wanted it within the Commerce budget, so.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, Commerce wouldn't mind if we delete that portion of the budget then?
Chairman, members of the committee, so there are lots of things in my testimony in that chart on page 3, as well as the particular item that the senator mentioned that we've had to think about and try to make some really difficult decisions to be respectful and to understand and to meet you where you're at, right? We've heard and want to work with you and be good partners. And your goal is reducing the budget overall, and that's what we've tried to do on the House is really prioritize our core functions and show and have discussions on where we think we can reduce the budget, but still perform and still be a leading agency in economic development. So while I might say, or my testimony and charts might say we're willing to take a reduction, I don't want that to be a reflection on the value of a particular program or item within the budget. These are difficult conversations, and for Commerce, we have to protect our core function and know what we need to continue to be a leader in economic development for the state.
So thank you, Rachel, and I'm glad you're willing to have the conversation, but I've just seen so much excess go on. Like, you reported all of the trips overseas and international and meetings, but no results from those meetings. And I actually get a report based on travel. Your expenditures are fairly, it's interesting to see how much travel that Commerce does. But so the international, how effective is it really? How much have we brought in the last 2-3 years?
Yeah, so I can go back to our international team and we can pull the number of leads and successful projects that have stemmed specifically from those trips and those conversations. Absolutely. We know that in order to be responsive, we have to meet folks where they're at. So it's important for us to travel out and to meet those business owners, you know, at their home place, right, and on their turf, to show our interest and to show how much we value them. And we absolutely have seen success. And I think that you can, you know, generally say that a lot of that has helped us facilitate these 269 economic development successes and that $3.5 billion in capital investment and a little over 5,000 jobs.
Rachel, one of the things that I think we've got on your copy of your, we did not get the colored. Could you identify the 4 line items?
Yes, yep. So the 4 that we highlighted that we would like to see an increase, and it's really important to understand that this is not an enhancement. It's an increase that would get us closer back to, or closer to our FY26 base allocation and also closer to our FY25 actuals. So in no way is this increasing our budget. But those 4 are the operating grant at the first line on the chart. And then about halfway down, it's international. And if you skip 2, it's broadband. And then if you go to the very bottom, it's tourism.
Those are the ones that you highlighted earlier.
Yes.
That we talked about earlier.
Yes.
They just weren't highlighted on this chart. Yes, Senator Reichman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I kind of like to piggyback on Senator Tyson's question concerning the trips. I was interested in the different trips that we've gone to different countries, and I think it's a good point to see the costs, but also we are talking about what are the results as far as what kind of trade missions and what kind of jobs and you know, what you're seeing in the future, whatever. I think that's important, but I think it's also good to see how it's going. Thank you.
Senator Clam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. So I'm going to piggyback on the piggyback for Senator Tyson. So, but one of the things that I think would be helpful, we talk about 13 billion in exports, and it'd be interesting to know if there's trips that are taken that help with our exports, as well as also learning the benefits of the trips that we've taken to bring business into our state, because there's probably some opportunity when you're traveling. I don't know if it's all for bringing folks here or if it's also export bound, but I think there's a story there that we're missing that would be helpful to understand. Thanks, sir.
Yes. Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rachel, a couple of comments and questions here. First of all, let me first say that I appreciate your willingness to delete part of your budget in 2025 that you didn't use. Yes. I think that oftentimes we're looking for places to cut, and rarely do we actually see agencies cut money that they're not using and just try to put it in other places. So I can certainly appreciate that. As I am looking at your budget request sheet, so first of all, help me understand, last year it was your rural opportunity zones. What does that $1 million request do? What do you guys provide for rural opportunity zones?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Rural Opportunity Zones is a specific program that our Office of Rural Prosperity manages. And I actually have additional information if you would like to. I've got some slides specific to the RAWS, what we call the RAWS program. And so what it does is it has two different components. It offers an income tax credit program and a student loan repayment program. And so you can see the details of the program on the first slide, and then it gives you the specifics as far as the total number of applicants for the student loan portion, and the total number of tax credit applicants that you've seen. It gives you an outline of those over the years, and then the last slide in that packet will show you our participants across the state. So
the $1 million is to administer the program and advertise the program?
Yes, and then it helps support that student loan repayment piece as well. So you also have to have a local sponsor for that component, but it helps with that as well.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that explanation. So let's talk a little bit about the Office of Rural Prosperity. So you've got, I see, at least 3 different entries in your request: Rural Champions, HEAL, and Emergency HEAL. Could you talk about those specific programs? Again, right here on the budget request sheet.
Yep. Thank you for that. So just wanting to start here. So the Rural Champions program, and I know that there were questions about that, whether that was in statute or how that came to be, and that was through a specific enhancement request. The years all blend together. So it was an enhancement request to start this program, and what this program does is our Office of Rural Prosperity has created essentially like a network. So you have to apply, you have to be from a rural community, and you apply to be part of this program. And so in some ways it's like a leadership program. So you apply and you've identified some problem within your rural community that's related to economic development that you want to work on. Maybe it's a building down on Main Street, maybe it's childcare, maybe it's business recruitment, maybe it's related to our community development block grants, something like that. So then a cohort is picked, and that group of people then works on their problems together. They're given lessons learned and best practices and resources from previous cohorts, because we've been running this program for a while. And it's that mindset of how can we help each other? And a lot of our rural communities are facing the same problem. So then is there a way for all of us or those folks to collaborate to maybe get a bigger bang for their buck, or to get a solution a little bit faster than if they were just working on that themselves? Because a lot of times, especially in our rural communities, right, you're wearing multiple hats, you're trying to get a lot done, and at times it can feel pretty isolated. So this was a way for us to try to maximize what we were communicating in the resources and the technical assistance we were providing to a very specific group. So we've gotten really great feedback. Our rural communities really love that program. We've been able to leverage some private dollars also from some different foundations across the state that help match and provide additional funding for this program. So it's been a good partnership, public-privately. The next one is, I think that you asked about, is HEAL. So this is a program that's focused on helping those historic buildings, again, in your main streets or your downtowns in rural communities. So this is funding that supports those infrastructure costs. Maybe it needs a new roof, maybe it needs some new piping, maybe it just needs new, facade and that sort of thing on the outside of the building. It's a grant program, again, established through an enhancement request. And we've seen really good success. With that, the emergency heal was specifically for, and we've seen in different instances where one of those buildings downtown that's older has maybe had a fire, or they've had a significant pipe leak and there's lots of water. So if we have, through this fund, we're not only able to help that particular building, but the thought is that then we're hopeful that we're saving the rest of those buildings on that block, right? Because if you've got a building that has had significant fire structure issues, it could impact that very next door building. So we got to, go in and fix it fast. And so that's what the emergency heal program was for. We think that, again, through difficult conversations and trying to prioritize, we worked with the House and said, I think we can address those emergency heal situations through the regular heal program. So we were comfortable with that removal or reduction of that particular program.
Great. Thank you very much, Rachel.
Yep.
Other questions? Yes, Senator Tyson.
Well, again, on the rural opportunity zone, if I understood your response, it's $1 million administration?
No. So that part of it is, yes, administration, but the other part of those dollars go to support the student loan repayment portion.
So we've got a fiscal note from tax that's approximately $3 million on that. So is there a duplication going on here, or? No, Eddie.
Yes.
I believe that the tax fiscal note portion of that relates to the tax credit side of the program, and this is the state's portion of the student loan repayment side of it. And I believe the extension piece of that applies to new student loan repayment agreements being entered into after whatever the date is within that bill. And so this would continue, the ones that have already been entered into would continue on for the maximum term of them, even if that bill doesn't become law, I believe.
Okay, so if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd like a breakdown of the student loan portion versus the administration portion, because depending on what this is, could be costing us more to administer the program. I mean, if it's costing 10% to administer it, I think we need those numbers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? One question that we did add was the reapportionment in 2026. Did you have an answer for that?
Yeah, so we, with our, let me find my page here. So reappropriations, so we were looking at restoring the total that we thought was going to be 5.9, and we worked with, again, the House side to come up with the amount that, because, again, we're already almost 3/4 of the way done with the fiscal year. So looking at what we had already spent of what we thought we were going to get in those reappropriations, and then seeing, no, there wasn't any way that we could spend that. So we reduced that down by 2.9 million. So we had asked and agreed upon with the House just to have that 3 million reinstated. And those are largely due to timing issues for us. So we had projects that just got completed or finished after July 1, just different specifics related to those projects.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And if we could still get that in an email, that'd be great. Thank you. I do have a couple of questions. On a report by the Department of Commerce for a 5-year period, 2019 to 24, your own report says that you invested $11 billion, and I don't think that's every program of everything what you do. But to me, that $11 billion in a 5-year period, that's approximately $2 billion a year. When are we going to see the benefit from these programs instead of government picking winners and losers, that we can actually start decreasing taxes and benefits for Kansans?
Yep. Thank you for that question. If I'm remembering correctly, what you're referencing is 11 billion, I believe, in that time frame is total capital investment. So out of those new projects, those new successful economic development projects that we've won, I think that's the total of capital investment. And I do know, and we are seeing positive effects from those programs, and we can specifically quickly look at Apex and Panasonic. Just within the building of that building, the DeSoto area, that community has been able to lower their property taxes because of all of the sales tax and capital investment made in that community. So there are ways, and we do have ROI numbers for those.
We are getting close to time. We need to be on the floor. Rachel, could you come back if we have a meeting on Monday?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not going to meet tomorrow, but we will meet on Monday to continue this conversation and get this through there. So with that, is there any questions? Yes.
She left Apex out as it's a positive, but I would say the people in my community say it's a negative because they've seen an increase in their electric rates as a result. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So with that, no other questions, we are dismissed.